Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to talk to you guys about eyeshadow palettes. I'm actually getting ready to film my eyeshadow palette ranking for 2020, where I go through and I rank all of the palettes that I tried from worst all the way up to best. So I can't wait to film that video. It should be up very soon. Before I do that, I thought it would be fun to share some eyeshadow palettes I'm glad I did not buy this year. I've done a couple of videos like this on my channel and I love eyeshadow palettes. So at any given point in time, there are all kinds of eyeshadow palettes on my wish list. And sometimes if I just take a step back and wait a little while, I lose interest in the palette, or maybe it comes out and it gets really bad reviews, or maybe I find a good alternative. But whatever reason, I'm glad I did not end up purchasing these, and I just thought it would be fun to go through and share them with you guys. I think I have 9 or 10 to talk about in today's video, so I would love to hear your thoughts, whether you guys purchased these palettes or you skipped over them. Let me know what you think. Let's kick it off with one that was released at the very beginning of the year. So this one is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Norvina Volume 4. It retails for $60, and this feels like forever ago. Now, she released the first 3 at the end of last year, and it's so crazy that that was only a year ago. This has been the longest year ever, but I was able to easily skip over the first 3, but the 4th one did catch my eye a little bit because it has pinks and purples, a lot of really pretty colors that I personally love to wear. Here's the thing about this palette and just these palettes in general. I feel like when they are reviewed and when people talk about them, they get good reviews, whether it's on YouTube or if you're on like Sephora's website and you're reading through the reviews. In general, people really enjoy them. But I also feel like people don't talk about them that much, whether it is on YouTube or when I'm asking you guys for recommendations. It doesn't seem like a lot of people have really purchased these. And if they did purchase them, they kind of talked about them when they first got them and then you never hear about them again. So I don't necessarily feel like I missed out by not buying any of these just because I don't feel like they're anyone's must-have palettes. And I have a lot of Anastasia palettes that I really love, but I know that this formula is a little bit different. So I don't know. I think if I would have purchased this palette in particular, I would have enjoyed it and I definitely would have gotten use out of it, but I do feel like it's the type of palette that would have made its way to the back of my drawer after a little while, and it wouldn't have been something that I reached for super consistently just because it is so large and so bulky, and I tend to prefer a little bit of a smaller palette overall. So this is a little bit of a newer one, but I can safely say at this point that I'm glad I didn't buy the Natasha Denona Trio Chrome palette. So this one retails for $129, and I've seen some mixed reviews. And for $129, it better perform pretty close to perfectly. The only Natasha Denona palettes that I've tried have been her $65 palettes, and then a long time ago I purchased a couple of her $25 mini palettes. I love the $65 palettes. They're expensive, and $65 is kind of pushing it for me, but the formula is so good. So honestly, I don't doubt that I would like one of her more expensive palettes. It feels like a big jump to spend that much on an eyeshadow palette, and if I'm going to spend that much, it better be perfect. Like, there really can't be any inconsistencies for me. I've read a lot of reviews saying the matte shadows are very chalky, they're a little bit patchy, they don't blend that well, and they don't look that great on the skin. And then I've also seen reviews where people said the multi-chromes aren't super eye-catching and they don't really look like anything spectacular. And that's kind of what they're marketing the whole palette around, would be those 3 multi-chromes. Now, I did talk about this in a purchase or pass video. 3 multi-chromes and that entire palette wasn't enough for me to feel like I wanted to spend the money on it, even if it was a smaller $65 palette. I'm glad I didn't spend the money on this. I have enough matte shadows, and if I'm going to try a multi-chrome, I want something really vibrant and eye-catching and fun. So I definitely plan on purchasing from an indie brand. There are 2 in particular that I saw pop up a lot in my comments, but if you guys have any brands that you love, please let me know. Let's talk about the Huda Beauty Naughty Nude palette. This one retails for $67. I did talk about this in a purchase or pass because I did kind of consider it. I very rarely impulse buy. In fact, I don't think I do it at all when it comes to makeup. I typically think about it or read some reviews first, just because, I mean, there is so much access to information now. You can just head on Instagram, search a hashtag, or even look at reviews on like Sephora's website to see what people are initially saying. And if it's getting pretty poor reviews overall, I'll skip over it. But I almost impulse purchased this eyeshadow palette because I think it was during the Sephora VIB sale when it was announced, and I was placing my order and I was like, should I just add this to my cart and buy it? But I decided to wait because I've never tried anything from Huda Beauty, so I wasn't sure if I would love the eyeshadow formula. What really pulled me in is the color story and the swatches. Everything about this palette is so pretty, and it's actually getting fairly good reviews, so I don't think it would be a poor quality palette, but I do feel like I have these shades in other palettes in my collection. In fact, when I was thinking about this video, I really wanted to wear some berry tones, so I pulled out one of the eyeshadow palettes that I have. This one is the classic Blossom palette from KKW Beauty, which I do like, and I mean, I have a lot of neutrals, I have a lot of berries, and I think this one was just kind of pulling me in because it looked very interesting, a little bit different and unique. I'm sure I would have enjoyed it, but I just don't need it. It wouldn't necessarily add a ton to my collection. So I haven't tried anything from Rare Beauty yet. I know the brand gets really good reviews. A lot of people enjoy the products. I'm kind of waiting to see what they release in terms of eyeshadow palettes, and they did release 2 eyeshadow palettes this year. I thought this was a little bit of an interesting release for their first palette because they released 2 limited edition palettes, and both of them have all shimmers. So the Confident Energy palette is $25, and then the Magnetic Spirit palette is also $25. And I don't know, I kind of feel like these eyeshadow palettes are not super consistent with the brand's aesthetic, so they kind of threw me off. And they are getting some good reviews. A lot of people like the actual formula and say that they are nice. $25 is not super expensive for what you get, but for me, I do feel like I have well, I was going to say enough shimmers at this point, but I love shimmers. So I don't know if I want to say that I have enough shimmers, but I do feel like I have these colors in palettes. They aren't necessarily colors that I would reach for over and over and over. So I don't feel like I need to repeat them with these 2 smaller accent palettes. To me, Rare Beauty is a little bit more of a natural line. So I think I expected to see more of a matte eyeshadow palette, something with neutrals and soft shadows. So I am curious to see what they release next. I do think it's going to be a little bit more of a neutral toned palette. And if that's the case, I might purchase it. I love colorful eyeshadow, but I just feel like when I think of Rare Beauty, I think of something a little bit more low-key overall. So I'm glad I skipped over those just because I don't think I would have used them as much as I would have hoped that I would, and they just wouldn't necessarily add anything to my personal collection. I thought about buying the Tarte Tartelette Give Gift and Get Amazonian Clay eyeshadow wardrobe. That is their eyeshadow set for the holiday season, and it's because I still hear so many good things about the Tartelette palettes. A lot of you guys tell me they are your favorites. Whenever I ask for recommendations, a lot of people still bring those up. And I tried them a long time ago, like years ago when they were really popular. I think that I purchased the original, and then I think my husband purchased the Tartelette in Bloom for like my birthday. And I don't know what it is about that formula. I just didn't like it. I felt like it was very dry. It wasn't super blendable, and they just never became staples for me. But still, to this day, a lot of people say they are their favorite palettes. So I thought maybe I would try them out again. My preferences have changed. I feel like my makeup skills have improved a little bit over the years. So maybe I could get them to work for me and maybe I would actually enjoy them. So I did think about picking this up. It is a $42 set. It comes with 3 9-pan palettes. They're saying it's $270 in value. I don't even know where they're getting that from because that means they are considering each of the mini palettes to be $90 in value, and the full-size palettes are like, what, $40? So I don't know how they arrived to that value. But I don't necessarily think $42 for 3 minis is a bad deal, especially if it is the same formula as their full-size Tartelette palettes. So anyway, I was reading the reviews about this set, and a lot of people said the quality is not as good as the original Tartelette palettes. I hate when brands do that, when they release a holiday palette or a mini set and they kind of water down the quality. That doesn't even make sense to me. It wouldn't even be beneficial for the brand, because if the brand released these mini palettes and they were the same quality as their full-sized, more expensive palettes, and people enjoyed the minis, they might go on to purchase the full size. But now after trying the minis and experiencing a poor quality product, they'll never buy the full-sized versions. So that doesn't make any sense to me. But based on those reviews, I'm glad I skipped over it, just because if I do want to end up trying one of the Tartelette palettes, I'll just go with one of the regular ones again. Another holiday palette that I almost bought because it's really cute, and I do think the packaging played a part in it, but I think the colors are really pretty, is the Marc Jacobs Beauty Iconic Multi-Finish Eye Palette in Terrific. So this one is $49.50. Now, I have been wanting to try out a Marc Jacobs eyeshadow palette for a while because I always hear really good things, and it is a formula and a brand that I haven't tried yet. Actually, last year or the year before, I did purchase a kit with some of their lip products, but I hear good things about their eyeshadows. And a few of the people that I watch on YouTube picked this up and they did some really pretty looks. I love the berries. I like that there are a few neutrals, but I tried to shop my stash and pull out products that looked like this. So I did pull out my Urban Decay Naked Cherry, and then again the palette that I'm wearing, a few other berry tones, and I feel like I was pretty happy with those. I used to be obsessed with berry eyeshadow. It was like the only thing that I would ever wear, and I do like wearing it, but not quite as much as I used to. So I don't feel like it necessarily makes a lot of sense for me to purchase a $50 palette that has a lot of berry tones in it when it's not a shade that I wear all the time, and it is a shade that I have in my collection already because I kind of went through a berry toned phase. So I don't know, I still kind of look at that one. I feel like if it gets discounted and they put it on clearance because it is a holiday palette, I might end up buying it. I just feel like I didn't necessarily need it for the full $50 price tag. I actually went back and forth on this palette in my head a few times because it's cute, and honestly, whenever I do try one of the Too Faced eyeshadow palettes in the tin packaging, I'm typically really happy with the quality. I know that might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion. Too Faced as a whole isn't a brand that I purchase from a lot these days, especially when it comes to their eyeshadow palettes, because I do feel like a lot of other brands do a better job in terms of color story and quality, but this one's cute, it really is, and I think the colors are pretty. So, I kind of compared it to my Too Faced Gingerbread palette from a few years ago, and I did feel like a lot of the shades were very similar. I thought the palettes would be nice to use together, but how many times have I used my Too Faced Gingerbread palette over the past year? Honestly, I've probably used it like once. I don't even know why that is. I think at this point, I just have other formulas that I like better, and that formula performs well. The matte shadows are blendable, the metallics are pretty, but I don't know. I think sometimes you just kind of fall in love with different formulas, and older palettes that you own might not get used as much. So truthfully, I should probably declutter it and pass it along to someone else. But after like thinking that through, and I like told myself I loved the Too Faced Gingerbread palette, I haven't really reached for it. So I feel like it would be the same case with this Too Faced Pumpkin Spice palette. Even though it's cute, I can appreciate the packaging and the theme without adding it to my personal collection. The last two palettes that I wanted to talk about are new releases, and I did talk about these in a Purchase or Pass video because they definitely caught my eye. I love the fact that Mel Cosmetics is not afraid to do really colorful palettes. A lot of brands will do like a pop of color, or they might do like a mini colorful palette, but Mel Cosmetics does a lot of gorgeous, really vibrant, colorful palettes, and the palettes from their Beetlejuice collection are so pretty. The recently Deceased palette retails for $48, and this one comes with some green shadows, some purple shadows. I did think about buying these, honestly, just because when I buy palettes these days, I'm trying to buy something that I don't have a lot of in my collection, and I do feel like this palette is so unique. But I also feel like when I saw these additional swatches, I didn't see this when the palette was first released, a lot of the purples are so super similar. I don't think they would look identical on the eyes by any means, but I do feel like they're close enough to each other that I wouldn't necessarily need to have all of them in one palette, and I could probably duplicate quite a few of these. And then also like the yellow tones and the lime greens, they're not shades that I would wear super often. I might reach for them on occasion just to switch it up and have some fun with it, but I don't think I necessarily need to purchase a $48 palette with those shadows in it. I think I like the other palette just a little bit more. This one is the Waiting Room palette. It's $58. Is it me, or are palettes getting expensive? Like half the palettes that I mentioned in this video are like $60, and that is a lot. Anyway, this one comes with really pretty berry tones, some reds, some pinks, and then some grays, a black. So I love this color story. I think it's really interesting, really fun. You can use the shades together. You can kind of do a really colorful look or something more toned down. But if I'm being honest with myself, I don't really wear grays and reds very often, if at all. I love colorful eyeshadow so much, but for some reason, reds are so intimidating to me. Whenever I wear them, I feel like I look sick. Even if it's obvious that I'm doing something a little bit more colorful, I don't know, they kind of throw me off. So there are shades in here that I know I wouldn't reach for very often, and that typically happens with the Mel Cosmetics palettes. Like I've purchased a few, and sometimes there is a shade or two that I don't end up reaching for a whole lot, and that might not be a big deal with other palettes, but Mel palettes are pretty expensive, and they don't necessarily come with a ton of shadows, which I don't mind because typically they are a little bit more curated, but if I'm paying $48 for like 8 shadows, I want to be able to use every single shadow fairly consistently. So I don't know how many super colorful palettes I'll be purchasing in 2021. It's interesting because some people say they'd rather pay more money for a more unique palette like the Melt palettes and something they wouldn't wear all the time. But then some people say they'd rather pay more money for a neutral palette that they would wear all the time. And I think I kind of fall more toward that side. Even though I have neutrals in my collection that I love, I'd rather pay a little bit more for a palette that I'm going to get a ton of use out of rather than more for a palette I'll only reach for on occasion. And I love colorful eyeshadow, but I don't wear it as much as neutral eyeshadow, at least this year. Anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I had a lot of fun chatting with you. I could talk about eyeshadow palettes all day. I always say I could have an entire YouTube channel dedicated to eyeshadow palettes. So in 2021, I don't know if I'm going to stick with my 1 palette per month rule. And the reason is I just feel like I'm not able to review as many palettes on my channel. It kind of limits things. Last year, I thought about doing 1 high-end palette and 1 drugstore palette per month. So I might do that, but honestly, I might just lift the whole rule as a whole because I do feel like over the years, I've kind of started to think through my purchases a little bit more carefully. And even without that rule, I don't think I would buy a ton of eyeshadow palettes. So we'll see. Whatever I decide to do, I definitely want to incorporate more tutorials, more get ready with me's, more reviews on eyeshadow palettes as a whole. I would love to do like 3 looks, 1 palette, just because palettes as a whole can be a little bit more expensive, and I would love to be able to review them more thoroughly and let you guys know if I think they're worth the money. So let me know what you guys think, but I hope you have a great day. I appreciate you watching. I'll see you guys very soon with a new video. Bye.